There we go. Now it says stop. Let me know when you see it starting up. Okay. So this is a Sunday afternoon call, Thailand. And today we're going to talk about mindfulness, which is, uh, Kat, can you turn your microphone off? I don't want okay, good. That's great. Uh, Today we can talk about mindfulness as a major kind of point. And that is that we need to remember to practice. Now, one of the things that I want to get into with this is that the practice is always done in this present moment. In that regard, it's always right on the surface. It's always right here. The question is can you remember to take advantage of it? To begin to see what's going on right here, right now. Now, one of the things that I've run across several times recently that we should talk about in the sense of when meditators become what they would consider themselves advanced meditators or have been meditating for a long time, they still see things coming up. And the idea then is that, oh, things keep coming up because things are deeply buried. Marcus, have you ever heard that question or that phrase of that things are deep? Deep roots.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. That's not correct way of thinking. Another example that'll help us go with that, you've probably also heard that trees are stable because their roots go deep. Guess what? Tree roots don't go deep. 100-foot tall tree will have roots that are still quite close to the surface. Probably, let us say, less than 6 feet deep. But the roots go out broadly. They go all over the place. And so one can think of then about practicing anapanasati or practicing meditation as like having gone to the woods with a shovel. And every mind moment or every moment is like shoveling into the dirt. There's a root. That we don't have to go way deep to find the roots. They're right there on the surface, so come up. Another way of thinking is that seeds are not planted deep into the ground. You're not going to have a tree if the seed for that tree is buried 100 feet under the ground. That everything is on the surface, right here in front of us, in the here now. And all we have to do is remember that there is no reason to even think about or practicing meditation in the sense of going deep, but rather to be aware of the mind state that you're in right now on the surface. There are no deeply buried issues that come up, but rather in fact, if something is deeply buried, it can't come up. That what comes up is already right there on the surface. That's where it comes up from. This is an important concept because we have a whole generation of meditation students who have this idea of things go really deep. And so they've got to meditate and go very deep in the meditation to get down to the really heavy duty things. Now, I will say that our instincts are, let us say, in the DNA. After talking about it, I'm hesitant to use buried into the DNA. But it's all the DNA, and that's what is instinctual. We have instincts to do things in a certain way. And the most important instinct is the instinct of fear. Fear is an instinct that comes out of the self-preservation instinct. And so anytime one becomes afraid, the root of it is an issue of survival. Just like the kid, let's say a 14-year-old is walking down the hall at school, and around the corner comes the big bully and two of his friends. And the 14-year-old boy has fear. The reality of the situation is that very unlikely is that 14-year-old kid going to die when the bully turns the corner and comes down the hall. But the child will freeze in fear as if it were a real issue, a real survival issue. This is instinctual, but if he is mindful in the moment of this fear and say, oh, fear has arisen, let me deal with that joyfully. And so he would then proceed, probably at a very fast rate, walk right past the bully. If the bully tries to stop him, he just continues on, saying something like, gotta go, see you later. But oh no, he will stop in fear, almost petrified, and giving the bully an opportunity to do something. So we would say, is that fear deeply buried? No. When it comes up, it's right there on the surface, something to look at. And can we deal with it because we can see it? Another thing about the meditator is that they think that, oh, if I get deep into meditation, then I'll remember past lives. And then they'll have an experience, maybe daydreaming. They daydream something. When they come out of that meditation session, they'll probably tell a friend about it. And because he thinks it's so important, he'll say, oh, I had a past life experience. No, he didn't. He put the term or the concept past life to just some dream he had. And so the whole idea then is that we have to come out of this deeply buried mentality and come right back to the surface of what's happening in the mind right now. It may be triggered by something. And so what we can do is learn with wisdom to control the kind of triggers that we have. What kind of trigger would we want? Wholesome triggers would be the thing. Or let us say that we can plant anchors. Now, one of the triggers that we could use would be an alarm or a cell phone clock that goes off and it rings, saying, oh, now is the time to wake up, to pay attention, to see what's going on, to practice anapanasati. Now, one of the things that's actually quite interesting is that built into anapanasati, in fact, the name of it is right there, mindfully breathing in and mindfully breathing out. That anapana is in-breath, out-breath. And it's actually the same word as pranayama. You've heard of pranayama yoga. And pranayama is out-breath, in-breath. So they're reversed and they put an R in it, and then people think that they're different words. For in fact, they're actually the same word. And so what we mean by anapanasati is mindfulness of breathing, or Bhikkhu Buddhadasa actually made sure that Santikaro translated mindfulness with breathing rather than mindfulness of breathing. Now, the quality that we're looking for here that you're actually talking about is what can we do to remember to practice anapanasati? The answer to that is built right into the breath. That if we can start practicing to mindfully breathe in and mindfully breathe out, then we're developing the skill of mindfulness that in fact you can't breathe in long and breathe out long ignorantly. That we do a normal shallow breath ignorantly in the sense that we're not watching it. But if we're actually paying attention to the breath, that's developing the sati to remember this breath is a long breath. And to remember that this breath is a long out breath. Long breath in, long breath out requires us to remember to do that every breath. And if we do that over and over and over again, we develop the skill of sati so that we will remember and catch ourselves doing things. Okay, so there's a lot of little things that we can do to tie that together. Now, one of the things that I was talking to Cathal about yesterday was the having an issue and how are we going to handle that. And there's basically two ways to handle every issue. One is to get away from it completely, and then the other one is to stay there with it, and when it comes up, we remember. So we start practicing to remember, to remember, to remember. So an example of that then would be that when the wife is angry, the husband, if he is unskilled, should at least remember to get out of the house, to go take a walk, to get away from the wife when she's angry, or get away from anybody when they're angry. That if dad is angry to the young kid, the right thing to do is to get out, to go away. Hello, Pedro.
Hi. Hello.
Interesting that you should come online just as we're talking about that. That when dad gets angry, the thing to do is to get out, to leave him, to get away from those kind of triggers. But that's the beginner's way. The more advanced technique is that while dad's angry or while the wife is angry, to sit there and mindfully, every time she does something, to keep your mouth shut. Don't fight back. Be aware that you're in control. And so she gets angry and she yells again. Never mind. I've got that. Over and over and over again. Another example of that would be if someone's on a diet, then it's better to have the fat, the donuts, I'll use as an example, not having any of them in the house. Or if the wife brings a cake, she did this, by the way, just days ago. One of my good friends here sent me a cake, and Tam wanted to put it right there on the bedstand. Well, the right thing to do is to know, go put it in the kitchen, or otherwise just throw it away. Because it's going to be garbage, it's going to be crap, whether it's today's crap coming into the toilet or next week's crap in the trash. It's still going to be crap. So it's hard to keep away from the cake if it's sitting right there in front of you. But it's easier to deal with it if it's in the refrigerator, out of sight, out of mind. Can you, in fact, be there and see it and not react to it? Oh, gotta have that cake. Oh, gotta have that donut sitting right in front of me. Right? And so this is a new kind of way of practicing that in fact you could go so far as to call it testing oneself. Can I sit there, have that donut right there on the table, and not eat it? Another example of that would be making the intention, because in the tropics, there's all kinds of bug bites. There's mosquitoes and all kinds of stuff. Cat will attest to that. And the answer that we're looking for is can I remember to not scratch, because the mind will start to scratch, or the natural reaction is to scratch a bite. And the answer is, can I remember not to? Well, back to the original point that we were making is that we can practice this with the anapanasati, to remember to take a long breath, and then remember to take a long out breath, and then remember to take an in breath, and then remember to take an out breath. So we begin to build the skill of sati. Putting the example back to the donut, if the donuts are not in the house, if they're down at the store, I think of donut not so many times. But if I think of a donut, I can say, well, never mind, there's no donuts here. In fact, I remember that quite well when I was at the Wat, at Wat Suan Mok, that wanting to get food was a 20-minute walk, at least, to get there, and a 20-minute walk back into the woods. So that was not an issue. However, if I've got food right there in the kuti, then every time I think of food, oh, I can have it. So there's two kinds of ways to look at this, and that is develop sati for the things that are nowhere around. An example of that, then, would be sitting in meditation and thoughts of Aunt Susie and the argument that we had yesterday, or thoughts of the argument we had with the wife, or thoughts of Dad being angry or whatever. Dad's not here. Aunt Susie's not here. Yet we think of them. Can we remember they're not here? Throw them out. We can remember there are no donuts here. Throw them out of the mind. So that's one kind of training, is to train to throw things out that are not available. Nothing unwholesome there except in the mind. And then the later practice, the more advanced practice, is having that dukkha right in front of us, and we can still remember not to engage in it. Yeah, Dad can yell, and I don't get upset. And he yells again, and I remember, oh, I'm not going to get upset. And so this is a more advanced way of practice. And so this is why the Buddha recommends in the beginning seclusion. Not just seclusion in a general sense, but seclusion from donuts, seclusion from Granny and Aunt Susie and Dad, and stay away from everybody, to go to a retreat, and yet we still remember things. And the right idea is to go ahead and leave. Just walk away, to get away from it. This is the part about seclusion, but we're not going to stay in seclusion. That's just part of the training to remember. And that in here, we can also say, well, we're not going to ever be secluded from the breath. When we go off into seclusion, when we go to the forest or a foot of a tree or an empty hut, you're going to take the breathing with you. And that's a more advanced kind of practice. And so at the very beginning, we can start to remember, I'm going to watch my breath. I'm going to actually intentionally slow the breathing down so that I can practice sati, to remember to take a deep breath. Now, I question here. Let's stop and ask the question. I have been talking about anapanasati and breathing slowly and giving you that anchor right here, telling you about it. How many people are now mindfully breathing? How many of you have started doing that? Here I am talking about it. All right, Kat's saying, yeah, I can remember. How about you, Marcus? I'm talking about it. Is that enough for you to remind yourself to start breathing long in and start breathing long out and remembering to do that?
Yeah,
Pedro.
being on these calls in general is quite a good anchor.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so you've got an opportunity to remember to take a long, deep breath and a long, deep out breath right here. That anchor is always there. And yet we don't remember it until we start practicing it diligently. Maybe make the kind of the game is that if I don't mindfully breathe, then the breathing will stop, and then I shall die. So let's remember to take a long, deep breath, put some oomph into it, give it a purpose so that we can start to remember to practice sati, because we have to remember everything. So many examples. One of the big example is that people in the United States do not drive their cars mindfully. They're not watching where they're going. They're having lunch, they're arguing with their kids, they're on their cell phone, worse, they're texting on their cell phone, they're not watching the road, and then some big accident happens because they weren't watching where they were going. But if we can watch where we're going, if we remember to pay attention and look at what's happening, we often don't screw up. That almost all of life's screw-ups is because we're not paying attention. We go off into the mind someplace and are not paying attention to what's happening right here, right now. And when something big happens, like a big automobile accident, then these meditators will say, oh, I've got to practice deep meditation. I've got to go deep into meditation. And the answer to that is, it's not a matter of going deep. It's not the quality of it. It's the consistency of it. Can you remember and then remember again and then remember again? This is the quality of sati that we're in the process of developing, is to remember. Remember, and the breathing is right there with you. You don't have to carry it around like a cell phone. That in fact, the Buddha actually mentioned that wherever you go, there is the breathing. You don't have to practice with the old style of meditation to have a kasina, or a water meditation where you have to have a bowl of water, or a fire meditation where you actually have to have a fire. Let's not practice meditation like that. Let's practice any and every moment that we can remember to practice, because we've got the breath right there. So remember, Pedro, are you remembering to take deep breaths while we're listening to me? How about you, Dean? Are you remembering to take long, deep breaths? Kath, are you remembering to take deep breaths? This is how we practice. And we don't need to sit in a formal setting on a special cushion in a special hall with special Buddha rupas or candles or incense or some monk sitting on a stage in order to practice meditation. And in fact, I don't even like the word meditation, because that's the image that people have for meditation. And the image that I would like to give you is to remember to breathe. Because you've got that meditation object right there all the time. You just don't pay much attention to it. And if we can remember to take long, deep breaths, then in that process, we can also remember to look at what the mind is doing. In this case, what is the mind doing? It's making sure that the breath is a long, deep breath and a long, deep out breath. There are other kind of anchors that you can use if you remember them, but that's kind of funny about anchors. To remember the anchors as an anchor, it's got to have some weight or some push. So an example of that would be Dad. Remember that when you're around Dad, he's going to criticize. Better not to be around Dad, but then we'll bring Dad in and his criticism into the mind. Can we throw them out? Now, Dad I'm using here as an example, but it can be Granny, it can be the boss, it can be a wife, it can be anyone who is going to, let us say, become a trigger or an anchor for you. So it might be a good idea for you to make a list of the people that you're around so that you can say, every time I'm around that person, I'm going to start practicing anapanasati. I'm going to start being mindful of my breathing, and I'm going to start being mindful of what I'm thinking and make a change. I'm making a change to the way that I breathe. Let me make a change to the way I'm looking at things. Take the effort to gladden the mind, to brighten the mind. Take the effort to breathe out and eliminate the fear. That in fact, whenever I would mention something like Dad being angry, everybody gets a little bit afraid right then and there. Can you tell that happened? Pedro, when I talk about Dad being angry, don't you feel already just the words that I'm using is enough to make you feel a little bit afraid? Yeah. So that's the anchor. Whenever you think about this someone or whoever it is saying, time to have a deep breath. He's not here now. Why should I be afraid? There's nothing to be afraid of. And so we brighten that mind. We gladden the mind. We allow the mind to come back to the place of there is no problem here. That ultimately, the big problem, the really, really big problem that you'll ever have is when you stop breathing. Only then is it dangerous, when you stop breathing. Somebody's got a gun in your face. What do people do? They hold their breath. They stop breathing. They're all afraid and everything like that. And he hasn't even shot the gun yet. So even if you've got somebody with a gun in your face, that's the time to practice anapanasati. Everything is okay. He hasn't shot me yet. I'm okay. No reason to have fear. He wants me to be afraid. That's why he put the gun in my face. If he wanted to kill me, he'd already kill me. He doesn't want to kill me. He wants me to be afraid so that he can control me. But guess what? Dad doesn't have to have a pistol. He wants to make you afraid with his voice. The wife who is angry, she wants to make you afraid so that she can get her way. Can you remember to breathe deeply, long? Remember to throw that fear out. It's right there on the surface. Fear is not deeply buried. If it was deeply buried, then we would never be afraid. It wouldn't get up to the surface. Oh no, it's right there. Can we, in fact, be aware when we do feel afraid? Can you be aware when there is tension in the body? Because if there's tension in the body, what are you going to do? How would you relax? One of the ways to relax and get rid of the tension is mindfully breathing in long and mindfully breathing out long. In fact, I don't know of any other way to relieve tension in the body. And that's, in fact, exactly what we want to practice, is relieving the tension so that we can feel relaxed. Mindfully breathing in and mindfully breathing out is the whole point, is so that we can relax. Relax the body, relax the feelings so that we have no fear, relax the mind so that it's not tense and uptight, and relax the kind of thoughts that we have so that they remain wholesome. That's all we need to do. Now, a sister to the concept of things being deeply buried means that enlightenment is something way up there, far away, just like feelings that are deeply buried far away. Oh no, your enlightenment is right here in front of you. All you have to do is remember that you're already enlightened. You've already got it made. Everything is already good for you if you can remember that. But oh no, what do? Instead, we create problems, almost always out of the past. Oh, my dad used to yell at me. Maybe somebody's going to yell at me in the future. Oh, I had plans to do something. I had, let us say, a schedule that I didn't meet. I lost a deadline and I felt all tense and worried about it. And now I create new deadlines to worry about. And if I can recognize I don't have to have any deadlines that I make are artificial. So let's not make deadlines. Let's remember everything is okay right now. Whatever that we're not doing today, we can do tomorrow happily. If we're in a rush and in a hurry to get it done today, so that we can feel relaxed tomorrow, we spend our whole life like that, and that kind of tomorrow never comes. The question is can you feel that you're in a hurry and tense? And that would be the cue then to make a change, what would mean stop doing what you're doing that's causing the uptightness, the worries, the sensations. So now we have what kind of triggers? Anything that you do can be a trigger to stop worrying about it. All your daily activities can be okay if you can just have fun at it. That in fact, this is what makes some people highly productive, who can get a whole lot of work done, is because they're not worried about the deadline. They're just having fun. They get absorbed into what they're doing, and they keep doing it and they keep doing it because this is okay. Yeah, there's more lines of code to write, or yeah, there's more lines on the spreadsheet that need to be cleaned up, or whatever it is, and we're okay with that. Every line of code that we write, we feel satisfied. Got that one. Every line of a spreadsheet that we're going to fix, every line that we write for our novel that we're writing is satisfying if we're enjoying it. But if we've got a publisher who's saying, oh, you've got to get that book done by next week, probably the right thing to do is to say, well, I'm going to go find another publisher when I get around to it. But I'm not going to have deadlines. I'm not going to force myself to do things when I am not having fun doing it. That the job is not nearly as important as how you feel in the moment. And you say, oh, if I miss that deadline, I'll feel really bad. Well, you're feeling really bad right now, whether you miss the deadline or not. So always tie it right back to the breath of what the breath is doing right here, right now. There's nothing deep about it. There's nothing magical or highfalutin or way up there in the air. Enlightenment is not way out there. It's not high up on that bookshelf where you put your plastic Jesus and your other religions. But there is nothing magical that we're looking for. So there's no reason to put ourselves under any pressure at all. The only pressure that we want to put in is, can I remember to take a long, deep breath? I keep coming back to that. Let's make this particular session a meditation session, because every time I remember and speak about the breath, that's an opportunity for you to make a long, deep breath. Make sure that when you're doing this, at least you get enough air in to make the shoulders rise. You can feel the shoulders rise. Then, in fact, you can exaggerate that. That would be actually a trigger that you could use, is that I'm going to breathe so that my shoulders actually rise. Can I take in enough air to make the shoulders rise? If not, I'll push them up anyway. And so this is how we develop sati, is by practicing it very, very often. All throughout the day is better. Now, for the beginner, he needs to do that seclusion. He can be sitting at his desk, walking on the computer, and then he can remember, oh, I'm going to take 5 minutes off. He can close the lid of the computer or turn it off or do nothing at all. Just don't pay attention to the screen and just mindfully breathe in and mindfully breathe out for 5 minutes, putting his mind into a really beautiful, relaxed state. And then an hour from now, we do it again for 5 minutes, 3 minutes. And then an hour later, we remember to do it again. The question is, do you have to have an alarm clock that goes off every hour in order to remind you? Or can you just remember? Remember when you're watching TV. Oh, I don't have to watch TV. I'm just looking for a way of structuring time, and one of the best ways of structuring time that I know of is mindfully breathing. Is this breath a long, easy, happy breath? So,
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
What do you mean by watching TV is a way to structure time?
Okay. We all structure our time. Everybody has 24 hours a day, and from diaperhood, we learn to structure it. Now, Eric Berne said that there are basically about 5 ways of structuring time. One is in activity. One is in game playing, which is the bad feelings. One is in work. Also, another one is in rituals. Now, in a way, this long breathing in and long breathing out is going to be developed as a ritual so that we remember to do it. And then another one, way to structure our time, is in what we would call intimacy. And that's exactly what we're actually doing when we're successful at practicing Anapanasati, is that we're being intimate with the moment. Now, a lot of people for many years, when they heard Vern talk about intimacy, they think about sexuality. No, sex is an activity. It's not intimacy. Intimacy is really being in the moment. And so you can begin to structure your time with intimacy instead of activity. For instance, watching cell phone YouTube or watching a movie is an activity, which is different than work. Work is actually getting something done, and we can actually have an enjoyment while we're doing work, and then we're taking the edge off of it so that it's not work. That in fact, work is something that we have to do, often with a deadline. You've got to get this grave dug. You got to bury this body, dig that grave, right? That's basically what all life is like, is that we have the work to do, and we see it as work, and we structure our time around it being work. With the other possibility, it's not work, it's being intimate with what we're doing. So how do you structure your time has to do a lot with your attitude about the time. If you feel rushed and in a hurry, you got to get something done, that's the definition of work. And activity means that you're just trying to spend the time. But intimacy means that you're really involved with this moment. And then the worst one would be game playing. An example of that is, I'm going to get her back for that one. Wow, I lost that argument. Let me plan on the next argument. I'm going to win the next argument. Okay, so game playing often then winds up being competition. We're competing with people. We're competing with time. We're trying to get something done, and it always has an element of bad feelings. That if we win the game, we feel good for a short time, but while we're playing the game and while we're losing the game, we feel bad. And that Eric Berne makes a point about game playing is that everybody winds up a loser. No one wins a game, just like no one ever wins an argument. Have you ever won an argument? Have you ever told somebody something and the argument say, no, that's not true, and then you give them some convincing information, and they say, wow, I'm really glad you told me that. Nobody ever wins an argument. Nobody. People don't change their opinions very often. So if that's true, then that would be a trick for you to remember to stop arguing with yourself. But you're not going to win. Just have fun with what you're doing. Become creative in the sense of finding new ways to be happy, to be satisfied. So, Marcus, do you have any questions about this? Are we going down the path that you were hoping we would go down?
Yeah, I think it's related to that. I guess there's also like some other good cues sometimes that can remember us to practice. For example, whenever I'm at work or kind of getting busy with some sort of intellectual activity, so I don't notice the body as much. But then if I, stand up, have to go somewhere, starting to walk is always kind of this cue to remember to relax, breathe.
Mm-hmm. You just reminded me of something. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, here is a definite anchor that I can give you. It's called a chair. Now, how many people spend their whole lives in a chair? Nobody. How many times, just recollect for yourself, how many times do you sit down and stand up and walk in a day? 10, 20, 30, 40 times? Maybe it would be a good point to start counting. How many times do you sit down and how many times do you stand up? And we can make this a point of mindfulness. And one of the ways that we can do that is every time that you stand up, you ask yourself a question. Why did I stand up? I was sitting in a comfortable chair. Why did I stand up? Maybe you stood up because your butt was hurting and it wasn't comfortable. That's quite possible. Also, you got to go to the can. Got to go to the refrigerator. Got to go get the other cell phone. Got to go here and got to go there. Got to go to work. Got to go stand at the water cooler. All these kind of things. So I give you this now as something new. Whenever you stand up, you don't stand up the way that you normally do. You're making a change here. That normally when we stand up in walking mode. We stand up to go someplace. And so we're going to start mindfully practicing with that chair, using that chair as an anchor. Whenever you get out of the chair, you stand. You don't walk. You get up out of the chair and you stand up. And then you ask yourself the question, why did I stand up? Making sure that we're mindful of where we're going, what we're going to do, that we didn't get out of the chair mindlessly. If you got an intention, make sure that we record the intention. How many of you, in fact, wandered into a room on your way to do something or get something, and then you forgot what it was by the time you got there? How many times have you said, oh, I want to look this up on, for instance, let me look this up on Google, and by the time you brought up Google and got it ready to go, you've forgotten what you were going to Google. So we need a new kind of mindfulness so that when we have an idea about something we're going to do, we don't lose it so quickly. And so this standing up is to impress upon ourselves why we're doing something. And the chair is a really, really excellent example of that. Don't walk, don't stand, or don't get up walking. Get up and stand. And ask yourself for a couple of, 2 or 3 seconds, exactly what it is. What was the purpose of getting up out of the chair? And then we can go about living our lives with full intention. We're intentionally getting out of the chair, but most of the time it's not intentionally. We get up mindlessly out of the chair. we had kind of a thought or an idea, then I'm going to go do, and then we forget before we get there. So now this is a new kind of way of practicing mindfulness, so that when we get up out of the chair, we're making a point of it. We could also use the same thing with opening a door. That whenever you get to a door and you have to open it, you can ask yourself, why am I opening this door? Like standing in front of a car, you open the door and you get in, and many people, maybe the idea was to go for a joyride or go to the store or go here, there, and the other place, and we get into the car and we forgot where we were going. So now we're going to make a full intention that when I open that door, I've got a purpose. I've got a reason to do it. And so we're going to make that kind of change so that we don't go about our lives mindlessly. Now there's another one. This is even better. And that is that when you sit down in a chair, why do you sit down? Why do you sit down? You can say, oh, so I can use the computer. Well, the computer's on a desk. If you had it up here, you could stand and work on the computer. But oh no, you want to sit down in order to relax. And yet, how many times do you sit down in the chair and not relax? So let's start making a point of this chair so that every time that you sit down in it, not only you're taking a load off your feet, you're taking a load off your mind at the same time. This is a time for anapanasati. Whenever you sit down, take a deep breath and relax, saying, thank you, Mr. Chair, to remind me that I can relax. So every time that you sit down in a chair, you relax. And every time that you get up out of a chair, you stand there to make a point of sati, to remember why we're going someplace and what are we going to do. This is not what you would call a formal meditation of sitting or squatting on the floor trying to remember. This is an active remembering. You can actually add things to it, like when you put your hand in your pocket. Why did you put your hand in the pocket? Did you do it mindlessly, or was there an intention? Whenever also, and this part of it basically is in the sutta, it's actually in the Satipatthana Sutta, that whenever you pick something up, holding in your hand, you slow down and have full intention of why you're picking it up. Give you example. Here's a little friend of mine, got this in Cambodia. And when I go to pick it up, that's how we normally pick stuff up, right? When we put something down, we just set it down, mindlessly. So now what we're going to do is start to remember to slow down. When you pick something up, you can pick it up opening your hands. There was actually an old movie, and then since then they've been doing it. Every Dracula movie, they do this. Whenever Dracula gets to the girl in the bed, what does he do with his hands? He opens them up wide and slowly touching and grasping. And whenever you set something down, you open your hands wide and move your hand back. Whenever you actually pick something up, why are you picking it up? And so we slow our actions down. We make sure that we are fully aware of what we're doing. These are some anchors that we can have. So the anchor I give you is the chair, and the anchor of picking stuff up. That in fact in the sutta it talks about reaching and grasping. Whenever you move your hand out to grasp something or to reach for it, notice that behavior and slow it down. Mindfully reach. Mindfully grasp. Mindfully set things down and then mindfully withdraw your hand from it. And sometimes you'll forget to, never mind, start again. Don't mindfully fussing at yourself because you didn't grasp something slowly. Instead, remember to grasp our bad feelings slowly. This is what Goenka talks about when the mind wanders away from the breath. Never mind, start again. When we stumble and fall, never mind, start again. When we get up out of the chair walking and we remember, then in fact I used to teach this often to the students. And what they would say is that, I can get about 10 feet away from the chair and then I'll remember that I should have stopped and pondered and asked myself the question, why did I get up? And the answer to that is that if you can remember 10 steps away from the chair, that's the time to stop and remember that you did leave the chair for something. And pretty soon you get good enough to where you remember when you're standing up rather than 10 steps later. Also becoming aware of those times when you leave a room to go to another room and you've forgotten what it was that you went for. The idea then, or the thing to do, is to stop and reflect. Why did I? What was it that I wanted? And see if you can bring it up. Because you had that thought just 10 seconds ago. Why is it so elusive now? Make a point of it. Start to remember things. Don't leave your junk laying around. Don't absent-mindedly set the cell phone down so that somebody can knock it on the floor. Mindfully take care of your stuff. Hello, cat. So we can take every object that we touch as a point of mindfulness. I would not say to do it with everything, but rather make a list of things. Like, for instance, if you ever enter the kitchen, as you're standing at the doorway of the kitchen, remember, why did I come in here? You don't have to do that for going to the toilet. You know why you went to the toilet. But going to the kitchen or going to another room, also when you turn your cell phone on, remind yourself, why am I turning this cell phone on? What is it that I want? And what value will I have in it that I could not have by just happily spending my time thinking about how nice things are in a state of intimacy? Why do I have to go into activity when I could just remain in a state of being in the moment? So, Kat, do you have anything to say?
No, I just think that any time whatsoever that I do something that is not out of a necessity, like going to the bathroom, I only do it because I want something. I just want something, and I don't even, a lot of the time it's just mindlessly looking at my phone because there's just even subtle sense of dissatisfaction, like looking at YouTube or something. It just happens so fast. You just want something all the time. It's just craving.
Right. So we normally sit down at, let us say, at the desk in order to do something. So instead of doing it, when we sit down, take a load off. Say, wow, let me relax and take a moment and take a deep breath and enjoy myself, and then I'll do it. So start putting big gaps into your life. Instead of going from activity to activity to activity, let's go from activity to intimacy for a little while. Being with yourself, being in the present moment, and then go do the activity. And then in the middle of the activity, stop the activity and just take a breath. When you're taking a sip of coffee, instead of just sipping and then going back into the activity, savor the coffee. Savor what you're drinking. Roll it around in your mouth. Pay attention to it. Be in the moment with things. Start practicing this over and over again. You have so many ideas or so many activities. Marcus, you were asking for triggers or anchors. What is not a trigger? What is not an anchor? It depends upon how you're looking at it. Everything can be a trigger. I mean, we have 10,000 different triggers to feel bad. How many triggers can you generate for yourself to feel good? Marcel, good to see you.
Hello.
So, do you have a comment about what we're talking about?
No, it makes sense. That's what I've been practicing.
Mm-hmm. Amred, how about you?
Yes, make perfect sense as well. So now I would about to start drinking my coffee, and I will make sure that every sip I savor it.
Mm-hmm. One of the qualities of a ritual is that it can become automatic. And what we want to do is to take the ritualization or the automatic behaviors into our awareness, to make it intimacy. That in fact, I could see that some monks will go to chanting, learn the chants, and then they're doing the chants mindfully rather than mulling over and savoring every Pali word.
The monks chant like 200 times faster when it comes to breakfast. You know, it just goes like that.
Yes, exactly. Uh-huh. So, this is the answer to your question of let's find some anchors. I highly recommend the chair. How many of you decided that you're going to practice this with the chair now? Marcus, are you going to practice with this chair?
Yeah, I've actually kind of usually done it with the chair, but it was a really good point, I think, as well about the cell phone. Like, especially for us modern folk, like how many times a day do we just pick up a cell phone and kind of mindlessly go into doing something?
Mm-hmm.
Luckily with
Mindless
my
activities, exactly.
yeah, luckily with this one, it's a little bit harder because it has a cover, so I have time to mindfully kind of open it up, and then I have to push a button for it to light up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's some assistance to remember to be mindful there as well.
All right. Pedro, go ahead.
Oh, even the pin, the cell phone pin, the code for unlocking the cell phone is good reminder because it's five digits. By the time I have to digital the 5 numbers, I can remember to why am I picking up the phone. And I can avoid picking up the phone and set it down.
Yes, that's the point. I don't use my cell phone very much. And because of that, I haven't thought too much about it. But you guys are probably on your cell phones a lot. And so make the cell phone then an anchor. In fact, you might, in fact, want to put a piece of tape right over the front of the screen that says mindfully breathe in and breathe out while using me. So you have to take that sticker off and paste it on the back every time you open your cell phone, that you can't even see the screen because you've got this anchor right there on the front of the screen. Now that's for a child. That's to get started. That piece of tape with that remark is not going to last long. And in fact, you'll probably get unhappy with it because it leaves the glue from the tape as residue on the front of the screen. So I wouldn't recommend that you do that for the long term, but I would recommend that every time you turn that cell phone on, you ask yourself, why? Or a better way of asking is, can I do something better with this moment? Can I keep that cell phone turned off for at least 1 minute now while I'm taking long, deep, easy breaths, happy? Yeah, so the cell phone, let that be an anchor. Every time you turn it on, you can mindfully say, I don't need this thing. Let me turn it back off and turn on my breathing. Turn on my sati. Start praying with that. Dean, haven't seen you for a moment or two. What you think? Probably mindfully in the toilet right now. All right. Does anybody have any last words or anything left to say?
No, I'm here, Dhammarato. All good. I'm listening away.
All right. Practice well. Enjoy. Find these triggers. We've got a couple of them. One's the door to open. Another one is the chair. When you get up, remember, when you sit down, relax. But you've offered one, the cell phone. Every time you open the thing, you can say, why? What is it that I'm doing? Because we often get addicted to certain things on the cell phones. One thing that we can get addicted to is the YouTube shorts. Some people get addicted to MSNBC. People will get addicted to Fox. Others will get addicted to porn. There's all kinds of reasons why we get addicted to the phone. And we can begin to look at that phone and say, do I really need you right now? Probably not. Probably you would spend more of your time being happy without it. For just 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Put it off just a little while. So, anybody got any last words? Kat, you got anything to say? How about you, Pedro? You're good. All right. Amit, how about you? Anything? You've got it. Excellent. Marcel, how about you?
No, I'm happy.
You're a happy camper. Excellent. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and finish this call. We'll see you later. Sadhu, you guys.
Have a good one, everyone.
Yes, everybody can say goodbye.
Bye. Just one question, Dhammarato. The call, one last question. The call start just at 11, right?
Well,
15 minutes back.
it started the call every time at the same time. There is no change. You changed your clock. So you need to figure out what you've done with your clock.
Okay.
Okay.
I will. Bye.
Okay. We don't change clocks in Thailand. There's no reason to do that in the tropics. All right. We'll see you.
Bye.